Episode 210. Surprises in Kansas City. Jake helped her put on the winter dress and whispered, "You used to blush when I looked at you, and now you're changing in front of me. Raise your arms." Serena blushed and raised her arms. She smiled and said, "We're like an old couple now, so there's no need to be shy." He straightened her dress and zipped her in. Hearing the phrase old couple, he couldn't help smiling. After getting the dress on, she reached for a pair of stockings. While she was putting it on, she found him staring at her. She couldn't help blushing again. Throwing her pajamas at him, she bristled. "Don't look!" "You just said old couple." He squeezed her nose. "So fickle." She looked away, put on the stockings and then her jacket. Pulling her hand, he said, "Mom's waiting for you. Let's go." Nola was sitting in the living room, chatting with Carson and Alex. Keith was not up yet. There was some kind of tea party going on, and a lot of relatives had come over. Seeing Serena, Nola immediately stood up and said, "Come here, Serena. I will introduce the relatives to you." After making a tour around the living room, Serena was happy meeting the family, but got a lot of blessings from their relatives. Later in the day, Jake also drove them to some relatives' homes, who lived farther and wanted to meet Serena. After an entire day, she was overwhelmed by their enthusiasm. She was treated to all kinds of food and tea, but she ended up not having a proper meal in the whole day. When they got back home, she almost collapsed. She was exhausted and immediately went to sleep. As per tradition, the next day it was Jake's turn to visit Serena's maiden side, which was the Clark family. Since Serena did not even speak with them, she told Jake there was no need for them to go anywhere. Jake agreed and reminded her that she had another maiden family waiting for her in Kansas City. "Well, can we do that?" "Sure we can. I will let them know." He kissed her and said, "Today we will leave for Kansas City." Serena was almost dying of happiness. She nodded with a smile and locked her arms around his neck. "Fantastic." Seeing her so happy, Jake whispered, "Kiss me." "No." "Then I'll kiss you." Then he sealed her lips and kissed her deeply. She closed her eyes and let him, while she tightened her arms around his neck. Jake called the Clark family and said they would not be visiting them. Then he drove Serena to Kansas City. He had initially offered her to fly her down, but she insisted on a road trip. Lest anything were to happen, they would at least be on ground. She wasn't the kind to get nauseous or carsick, but since the journey was a long one, so they had to take multiple stops. It was an 8-hour drive from Austin to Kansas City, and Serena puked at least 7 times during the trip. When they finally made it to Kansas City, the crisscrossing roads proved to be confusing. After searching for a long while according to the address Travis gave him, Jake finally found the place. But the problem was that the street was so narrow that the car could not even enter. After finding an underground parking lot, he then took his wife to look for his father-in-law's house. However, they ran into someone they did not expect to see. When seeing them, Stephen Wrong looked surprised as well. "What are you doing here?" Serena glanced at the gift boxes Stephen was carrying and teased, "Are you here for Miranda?" Serena knew that Miranda was also from Kansas, and so did Jake. Seeing the gifts in Stephen's hands, he knew she was probably right. He arched an eyebrow and looked left and right. "Does Miranda live near here?" Stephen blushed slightly and cleared his throat. "Who says I'm looking for her? I'm only here to see some relatives. I'm leaving now." He walked fast. Looking at his back, Serena was reminded of her previous lifetime. She remembered that when Stephen had pursued Miranda in her previous lifetime, it had been crazy. The man was so into her. He even waited outside her house for 12 hours. She looked at Jake, who was suspiciously staring in Stephen's direction. After their last showdown, she was glad he and Stephen weren't fighting. After all, she knew what Miranda meant to him, and Jake in his own way was super protective about her. Waiting at the door of their daughter's room, Miranda's parents could not get her to open the door. Her mother yelled to her father, "Look at the Jacob family next door. Their daughter had a boyfriend when she was 22, and now they're married and have a kid. She was only 24, and your daughter is already 26. Why aren't you worried?" Miranda's father was not interested in the topic. However, after his wife threatened him with money, he had to join her. Hearing his wife out, he said confidently, "Well, she takes after me, and looks beautiful. We don't care." Seeing his cockiness, Miranda's mother frowned and said, "What is the point of all these good looks if she doesn't use them and gets herself a good husband?" She frowned. Just when Miranda's father was thinking about what to say, the doorbell finally rang. His eyes lit up. He immediately got up and said, "I'll go get the door." His wife knew what he was doing and glanced at him contemptuously before she continued her speech. Miranda's father opened the door and saw a handsome guy. When he saw what the guy had in his hands, he was discouraged. "Are you a salesman?" Stephen smiled, looking like a gentleman. "No, Uncle. I'm here to see Miranda." Hearing what he said, Miranda's father thought he must be going deaf. "Who did you say?" "Miranda. Your daughter." He immediately jumped and yelled, "Sweetheart, someone is here for Miranda. A handsome young man." Hearing the phrase, "the handsome young man," his mother immediately dashed over. Overjoyed to see Stephen, she asked, "Are you here for our daughter? Come on in." Then she immediately dashed back to Miranda's bedroom. Hitting the door, she exclaimed, "Miranda, wake up! Someone's here for you. Get up!" Miranda worked very hard throughout the year, so when she finally went home for the holidays, she wanted to rest it out. And she had finally got a chance to take a few days off and sleep in. However, the duet of her father and mother did not allow her that privilege. Annoyed, she woke up and went downstairs. With her hair messy, Miranda opened the door in wrinkled pajamas and growled, "Stop it! Ugh! Can't I have some sleep?" With his hands full of gifts, Stephen saw Miranda, and his calm look cracked a little. Miranda was dumbstruck to see him. Arching an eyebrow, he said calmly, "I'm here to visit your parents." Miranda stared, her eyes wide, looked down at herself, and immediately shrank back, closing the door behind her.